This is a quote from Pan American Health Organization. It says, globally, 1 in 2 children aged 2 to 17 years suffer some form of violence each year. According to a global review, an estimated 58% of children in Latin America and 61% in North America experienced physical, sexual, and/or emotional abuse in the past year. Child abuse is something that is widespread, and it is a very common issue, as you can tell to these percentages. It also has many severe effects on children, especially on their behavior and their mental health. Good afternoon, I'm Ekaterina Troutman, and today I will be discussing the negative mental and behavioral effects of sexual and physical child abuse on children. In terms of a research question, my research question was, in what way does sexual and physical child abuse impact children's behavior and mental state? And my argument is children's mental health and behavior are negatively influenced, then they undergo physical and sexual child abuse. Simone Biles demonstrated a negative mental effect from sexual child abuse, even though she is one of the most world-famous gymnasts in the entire world. As we now know, she has spoken up about her recent allegations against Larry Nassar, where she was sexually abused as a child, and she ended up pulling out of the 2020 Tokyo Olympics due to her having mental problems and stress. That's what she claimed it as. And she said, "I was fighting all those demons. I just don't trust myself as much as I used to. Never felt like this before. No, the mental is not there." So why was this competition any different from any of the rest? The truth is, it wasn't. She was stressed because the effects of abuse and assault can come later on in life, and this could have easily been an effect of the assault that she experienced with Larry Nassar, and that was also a potential reason that she pulled out. In a YouTube video posted by PBS NewsHour, they showcased part of her speech where she was talking about Larry Nassar and how the abuse between him and her still haunts her up until this day, and how it haunted her all the way up into her pulling out of the Tokyo Olympics. She said, "As a lone competitor in the Tokyo Games, a survivor of the score, I can assure you that the impacts of this man's abuse are not ever over or forgotten." She explains that she has still been affected by this abuse all the way up until today, and it caused her to pull out of the Tokyo Olympics. Physical child abuse is one of the most common types of child abuse that there are, and has a huge mental impact on children's mental health. Rosanna Norman and some of her colleagues, they performed and conducted a systematic review and meta-analysis where they found findings of physical abuse, emotional abuse, and neglect were associated with a significantly increased risk of anxiety disorders. For physical abuse, significant associations were also observed with PTSD and panic disorder diagnoses. She also said, physically abused, emotionally abused, and neglected individuals were found to have a higher risk of developing depressive disorders than non-abused individuals. Physically abused children are more likely to develop mental disorders than any other abuse, as Norman has stated. And these mental disorders have followed them onto life, and they can affect them in the present and also in their future. But it doesn't only affect them, it also affects their family and their friends and their partners and anybody who surrounds them. Sexual child abuse doesn't only affect children's mental well-being, it also affects their behavior and their actions. Judy Kashmir conducted many different studies and conducted a lot of research, and also agrees upon lots of other similar studies that are very similar to hers. And she agrees with the information that they have come up with in the end. And she has also said, similarly, Nelson in another Australian study involving 1,991 twin pairs found that in twins where one had been sexually abused and the other not, the abused twins had significantly higher rates of major depression and attempted suicide, conductive disorders, alcohol and nicotine dependencies, social anxiety, rape as an adult, and divorce. The study that Nelson conducted helped us show that there are many different variances of behavioral effects, such as risky behaviors or risk-taking behaviors where they intake substances, attempted suicide, and also their communication with others and what other problems that it can cause. Another type of behavior that is also affected is their sexual behavior. David Kolko says, multivariate analysis of variances indicated that sexually abused children inhabited greater sexual behavior, fear, mistrust, anxiety, and withdrawal at home, and greater sexual behavior, fear, anxiety, and sadness in the hospital than non-abused children. When children are sexually abused, they are exposed to arousal, and this can cause them to get lashed onto the feeling and end up searching for it, which will end up with them being more likely to engage in early sexual activity and behaviors just to attempt to chase the feeling, and maybe even possibly as a method to get things that they would want. Physical child abuse also has some detrimental effects on their behavior. Odhayani mentions in his article that when children are abused, many might display disturbed forms of attachment and abnormal patterns of emotional response toward their caregivers. In most cases, the abusers of these children are either their parents, caretakers, or even guardians. When the child feels that they have been harmed, they are more likely to turn their attitude and their behavior away from you and be more distant and start forming weird patterns. As a result, the bonds between the parent and the child will no longer be the same, and they can never go back to the way it was. Risky behaviors are also a result of physical child abuse. Odhayani continues to say they engage in risky behaviors such as smoking, drinking, early sexual activity, using drugs, prostitution, homelessness, gang involvement, and carrying guns. The risky behavior that is very similar to those of sexual abuse. My resolution that I came up with was that physical and sexual child abuse negatively impact the child's well-being, mental well-being, and their behavior. And the long-term impacts that I came up with was that it leads them to get addicted to substances, early sexual activity, and depression and anxiety, which will all impact them in the future one way or another. Thank you.
All right, Kat, how valid and reliable were the sources that you used, and how do you know they were?
I know they were very reliable because they were all peer-reviewed academic journals, and most of them were conducted by professionals, researchers, and they were also professional studies done, and they were also stimuluses from College Board.
All right. And what advice would you have for people who want to take this very heavy topic and do more research with it?
I would say take a lot of time on the evidence, because most of the articles that you're going to read is going to restate the same thing. So if you want to have a broader version of all the different effects that it can have, take longer time to make sure that you can find all of that evidence.